Yeah, I wrote about this week about legal tech companies and why they rarely go public. And it stemmed from last week. I spoke to contract cycle management provider Ironclad when they announced their acquisition of PackSafe. And the CEO, he said, like, you can quote me, Ironclad will go, we will file an IPO. We're in the business of acquiring companies, not being acquired. And I was just kind of like, okay, that's kind of interesting. Just looking into the history of legal tech, you don't see too many companies that's taken that step. And I reached out to some legal tech investors, and they were kind of mentioning why, you'll see successful legal tech companies. They're successful companies, but they don't necessarily have the cross appeal and usage across like outside of legal departments, and they're not like a department company wide tool. And that's why when investors, when they're looking for that multi-billion-dollar investment, they don't see it in legal tech because it's not necessarily usable outside of like just lawyers using it. So that was interesting, and I thought it was a little bit interesting that the companies that have said publicly that they are interested in going public, they have been like, they're legal tech companies in the CLM, contract life cycle management sector. And it's interesting because like we have seen consolidation in that part of legal tech and also like investments. And they were just kind of saying like, I think Jason from Ironclad, he said, like, I think we will get to a point where there'll be at least one legal tech company throughout the entire industry that is public. But contracts is kind of like, if you can, contracts are impacted not just by like the legal department, but you're also HR, sales, financing. People want to know what's in those contracts. So I think that's why they were saying like that might be the industry that you might see a little bit more of those types of companies going public. So I thought it was interesting. And of course, the time will tell, like, will those companies actually go public? Will they be successful? Like there's been some companies that did do it, and just to kind of see like how the industry is maturing and if it'll get to that level where you'll see them exchange on like stock exchanges.
I think it's really interesting. We talked a little bit about this last week too, but I've also, like you said, they're all in the CLM. I've also talked to the CEOs of Agiloft and Evisort, who also both say, watch for us to go public within the next 5 years, if not sooner. And it is interesting that it's all happening in the CLM space. You kind of wonder if there's a bubble in that space, what's going to happen, because there's just so much money going into that space, so many different startups in that space. And not just startups. I mean, Agiloft is a 30-year-old company that's, just took its first major investment ever over the past year. So it's a hot market. What happens with it, I don't know.
Yeah, I always think about when DocuSign, like a company, I think people that don't even follow legal tech, they've heard of DocuSign, and them buying Still, like a contract analytics provider. That makes me kind of think like, yeah, maybe there is like a market, outside of just like the legal for when it comes to like contracts, if you can get the whole entire cycle, even down to like signing it and everything. So there is maybe like an opportunity for it. Will it be like that billion-dollar company? I don't know, but it seems like it does kind of like have a demand like in companies and even like for consumers, individuals that aren't part of a company.
Right. Well, Ironclad does have a valuation in excess of $1 billion, right? I forget what they reported, but something up there.
So that makes me wonder, with a story you're going to talk about, Bob, about the VC investments in tech justice spaces, if you can find ways to partner and scale or bring together these universes of technologies to create these larger offerings in a public setting, if that is more attractive to investors.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that, I think what's attractive to investors is kind of like what Victoria's talking about, which is the fact that the fact that it's not just a legal product per se, although that it spans different sections of the corporation. I mean, it makes some of these people I talk to who work for some of these CLM companies say they're pitching their sales as much to the people in the sales department as they are in the legal department, and sometimes the sales department is their inroad into the legal department to get a bigger deal with a company. So I think that's a major force there.